The marble lobby of the Westbridge Grand Hotel gleamed like a stage set for a play no one rehearsed. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over polished stone, the air faintly scented with lilies and espresso. Guests moved in tidy lines toward the reception desk until those lines slowed, bent, and finally pooled into a restless half circle around a single woman. She stood at the counter in a tailored navy coat, her posture straight, her hands clasped loosely before her. A fine sheen of rain clung to her sleeves, but she didn't brush it away. Her face was unreadable eyes, dark and sharp, tracking the flurry of motion around her the way a general watches an unsettled field. "Ma'am, for the third time, we do not understand you," said the concierge voice tight. He darted a glance at the growing crowd, and the two interpreters whispering at his elbow. The woman said nothing. Behind her, an assistant in a black suit tapped frantically at his phone. The interpreters tried again in Mandarin and French. Both met with the same stillness. "Should we call security?" a clerk muttered from behind the desk. "She's not aggressive," another whispered. "She's just not answering in English." A third clerk lowered her voice, but not enough to hide the edge. "And she's booked in the presidential suite, for heaven's sake." At the far end of the lobby, Daniel Mercer's mop paused mid-stroke against the polished floor. His gray work shirt blended into the muted marble and brass, as if the building itself had dressed him. People rarely noticed the janitor, and he'd learned not to mind. But from this distance, he could see the way the woman's stillness was being read, impatience curdling into judgment. The stairwell door swung open, and Vanessa Cole, the hotel's general manager, descended as if she owned each step. Her crimson lipstick caught the light. Her heels clapped against the marble. The clamor softened at her arrival. "Good morning," she said, placing manicured hands on the counter. Her smile was practiced. "I'm the general manager." "How may we assist you, miss?" The woman's gaze slid to her unblinking. Silence. Vanessa's smile thinned. "Miss..." She leaned forward, her voice firming. Still nothing. "She's refusing to speak," Vanessa announced over her shoulder. "This is unacceptable." Daniel felt the temperature shift not in degrees, but in the air's texture. Politeness stretched over something brittle. He could read it, contempt hiding inside customer service fear disguised as protocol. "This is America, ma'am," Vanessa said, slow and clear as if addressing a stubborn child. "If you want service here, you need to speak English." The woman exhaled, barely audible. Deliberate. Daniel's spine prickled. The assistant stepped in quickly. "She's not being difficult," he murmured. "She prefers to conduct formal matters in her native language." "Formal." Vanessa gave a sharp laugh. "We're not in Tokyo. If she wants towels or champagne, she can point like everyone else. But she's blocking the line." Daniel set his mop into its bucket, the quiet slosh loud in his ears. He wasn't sure why his feet began moving toward the desk. Maybe it was the look in her eyes, not annoyance, not arrogance, but the weight of being measured in someone else's currency. Vanessa signaled to a uniformed guard. "Escalate this to management security." The assistant stepped in front of her, alarmed. "Please, she's one of the most respected executives in Japan. She's delaying service in a 5-star hotel," Vanessa snapped. The woman's fingers twitched once at her side, then stilled. Her silence was not retreat, it was steel. Daniel stopped a few feet from the counter. "Excuse me," he said. Heads turned. Vanessa blinked. "Mr. Mercer, this doesn't concern maintenance." "I know," he said. He faced the woman and gave a slight bow, just enough to be correct, not enough to make a spectacle. In soft, fluent Japanese, he said, "Ocha o meishiagarimasen, ka Sato-sama." "Would you care for a cup of tea, Miss Sato?" Sato. The room seemed to inhale all at once. Even the piped-in piano music faded to a memory. Her eyes widened, not in theatrical surprise, but in the subtle way recognition blooms. She answered in quiet Japanese, her voice like the first notes of a koto. Daniel nodded and gestured toward the lounge. "We can sit there." "No pressure, no misunderstanding," the assistant stammered, turning to the staff. He's speaking perfectly." Kyoto intonation. Vanessa's voice cracked. How do you even know Japanese?" "I don't think that matters right now," Daniel said gently. Miss Sato-ren raised a hand, stopping whatever Vanessa meant to say next. Without looking away from Daniel, she said in Japanese, "Onore no tei an o ukemashu." I'll take you up on your offer." And just like that, the most powerful woman in the room left the marble counter and walked beside the janitor toward the quiet lounge. The tea lounge was a world away from the clamor of the lobby low ceilings, amber light, and the faint scent of sandalwood drifting from a hidden diffuser. A junior staffer, clearly eager to escape notice, had already set a lacquered tray on the table, porcelain cups, a pot wrapped in a white cloth to keep the steam in. Daniel held the door for her, and Ren Sato stepped inside without a sound. She moved with the measured grace of someone who'd been taught that each gesture could speak as loudly as any word. He poured the tea slowly, careful to keep the ceramic from clinking against the saucer. "It's been a while since I did this properly," he murmured in Japanese. Ren accepted the cup with both hands, inclining her head slightly. "Your accent is Kyoto," she noted, her voice low and deliberate. Daniel smiled faintly. 7 years there teaching cultural linguistics, specializing in silence dynamics. Her gaze flicked upward, studying him. "You left my wife past," he said simply. "After that, I needed work where no one asked me about my past or my future." She didn't look away. "Silence isn't always retreat," she said. Sometimes, he replied, "it's the only honest thing left." A stillness settled between them, not uncomfortable, but suspended like the moment before a bowstring is plucked. Outside the glass doors, the lobby continued its steady churn of arrivals and departures. Here, the only movement was steam curling from their cups. Ren's voice shifted to careful English, touched with Kyoto's melodic lilt. "Do you know why I stopped speaking English in negotiations?" Daniel tilted his head. "To see who will try to understand you when it isn't easy." Her lips curved barely. "An American firm once offered me a partnership. They praised me, flattered me, then mocked my accent when they thought I couldn't understand. I ended the deal. Donated the technology to a nonprofit instead. Cost me millions. I slept better." Daniel didn't smile out of amusement, only respect. "I hope that keeps them up at night." She sipped her tea, eyes on him. "And you gave up tenure to clean floors." "No applause for that." "My daughter was 3, he said. She cried herself to sleep every night. I couldn't lecture theory while she felt alone." For a long moment they said nothing, but he could feel the weight of her attention, the same weight she carried in the lobby, only now turned toward him instead of against the room. "They were afraid of your silence," he said finally. Ren's brows lifted slightly. "People always are," Daniel went on. "Silence leaves too much room for truth." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You didn't flinch." "I saw your eyes," he said simply. Something shifted in her face, not breaking but loosening. She set her cup down with precision. "Tell me the truth, Daniel Mercer. Why did you come to me?" He leaned back, considering. "Because they looked at you like you were the problem. I've seen that look before on faces that used to admire me before I lost my title, my voice, my status." She studied him for a beat. "You noticed me," she said. "I remembered you," he corrected. Her head tilted. "We've met, no. But I remember people like you, people who don't need noise to matter." A faint smile appeared, the kind that doesn't need to be acknowledged to be understood. "Will you stay a while?" she asked softly. He nodded. For the first time that day, the silence between them didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like a truce. Upstairs, the glass-walled boardroom of the Westbridge Grand hummed with the quiet tension of a meeting no one wanted to attend. Vanessa Cole stood at the head of the table, her crimson lipstick now a sharp slash against her pale expression. The iPad in front of her replayed a 10-second clip over and over, Daniel Mercer bowing slightly, speaking soft Japanese to Ren Sato, Ren accepting his invitation with a subtle nod. This Vanessa snapped, tapping the screen as circulating online like wildfire. The PR director leaned forward cautiously. "It's being received very well. Words like dignity, grace, and cultural sensitivity are trending." It's making us look like fools," Vanessa cut in. "We have 3 certified translators on payroll, none of them connected with her." And then a janitor walks up and she broke off as if the words themselves tasted bitter. "Makes us look incompetent." Across the table, the regional director cleared his throat. "With respect, it doesn't make us look incompetent. It reveals that we already were." Vanessa's jaw tightened, but she didn't answer. Meanwhile, in the quiet hallway outside the lounge, Daniel stood at a vending machine watching a bottle of green tea spiral down into the tray with a dull clunk. He didn't hear Ren approach until her voice drifted beside him. "That machine is still selling Ito and tea," she observed, almost amused. "I haven't seen it outside Tokyo in years." Daniel handed her the bottle without hesitation. "This place likes to look international. Just don't ask if it's refrigerated." She accepted it with a soft laugh. "Thank you for earlier. I don't know how else to say it." "You already did," he replied. Her gaze held his. "I meant more than the tea. You saved me from becoming someone's spectacle." He shook his head. "You saved yourself." I just translated the moment. For a beat, they stood together in companionable quiet. Then her expression shifted, almost playful. "I'm used to being underestimated. Sometimes I count on it. But Vanessa looked at me like I wasn't even human." Daniel glanced toward the lobby. "That's the thing about places like this. Polished surfaces, cold smiles. It's all about what people think you are until you step outside the script." "And you, Daniel Mercer," she asked. "You stepped far outside it." "I've been off script for years," he said, her head tilted slightly. "Why?" He hesitated, then answered without drama. "Because silence became easier than defending the truth." Her brow furrowed. "After my wife died," he continued, "I had to raise Lily alone. I left the university, took whatever work I could. But after a while, I realized something: the world only respects knowledge when it's wearing a suit and holding a slideshow." She didn't reply immediately, but the weight in her eyes told him she understood. Before he could say more, the assistant manager appeared at the end of the hall, looking flustered. "Mr. Mercer, Miss Cole would like to speak with you urgently." Ren stepped forward before Daniel could respond. "Mr. Mercer is assisting me. If Miss Cole wishes to speak with him, she can schedule it after our meeting is complete." The young man stammered, "Yes, ma'am. I'll let her know." He retreated quickly. Ren's eyes sparkled with quiet amusement. "I may not raise my voice, but I've learned to raise eyebrows." Daniel chuckled. That was a master class. Back in the boardroom, Vanessa paced like a shark. She's redefining protocol. A guest is not supposed to dictate staffing, especially when that staff member is maintenance. Actually, the PR director interjected, "The footage is already being praised online. The coverage is helping our image." "Trending doesn't sign checks," Vanessa snapped. "Neither does insulting a billionaire," someone muttered. She ignored it. Downstairs, Ren and Daniel returned to the lounge. A small plate of manju, still warm, waited on the table, likely placed by a staffer too shy to linger. Daniel offered one to Ren. She accepted it, her fingers brushing his briefly. "Someone here still takes pride in service." He sat across from her. "You said words had become weapons. I've always believed they can be bridges, too." Her gaze softened. "Only if spoken from the right place." "And where do yours come from?" he asked. She hesitated, then said, "A place I haven't let many visit." He didn't look away. "May I be the exception?" The silence that followed was not awkward. It was deliberate. "My father was a Buddhist craftsman," she said at last. "He used to tell me, 'In silence we remember who we are. In noise we forget who we were meant to become.'" Daniel exhaled slowly. "That explains a lot. I lost him when I was 21, she continued. "The day before he died, he told me, 'Don't fear being misunderstood. Fear becoming someone easy to understand.'" Daniel's voice was quiet. "He would have liked you." She blinked once hard but didn't let the tears fall. And for the first time, Daniel saw in her the same thing he had seen in the lobby, a woman holding herself together, not because she wanted to, but because she didn't trust anyone else to help her do it. By mid-afternoon, the clip had exploded. It wasn't just hotel gossip anymore. It was everywhere. A grainy video from a guest's phone showing Daniel bowing, speaking soft Japanese, and guiding Ren away from the front desk had been shared over 400,000 times before lunch. By the time the Westbridge Grand social media manager refreshed her feed, again, the number had doubled. The janitor. Who listened trended above celebrity scandals and political outrage. Underneath captions told the same story in different words. While managers panicked, a janitor connected. The front desk phones rang non-stop. Some callers wanted reservations. Others wanted to know if that janitor still worked there. Upstairs, Daniel sat alone in the staff break room, fluorescent lights buzzing faintly overhead. In his hands, a sheet of corporate stationery. Subject Employee Conduct Review. Due to recent public exposure and deviation from assigned duties, a formal internal review has been initiated. Until further notice, please refrain from guest interaction beyond your assigned cleaning responsibilities. He folded it twice until the words disappeared in his fist. He wasn't angry, just tired. The break room door opened and Marcus stepped in, still wearing his concierge's jacket. He glanced around to make sure no one else was there, then dropped into the chair across from him. "They're panicking upstairs," Marcus said in a low voice. "Vanessa's about to lose it." Daniel didn't look up. "Because I spoke Japanese to a guest." Marcus leaned forward. "No, because you reminded everyone what service actually looks like." Daniel gave a humorless chuckle. "I'm not a legend. I'm a man with a mop who forgot to keep his head down." Or maybe Marcus countered, "You're a man who remembered he still had a voice." Daniel's gaze drifted to the folded paper in his hand. "HR wants silence again." Marcus's voice softened. "For what it's worth, she saw you. All of you. Miss Sato, I mean." Daniel glanced at him, then looked away. "That's the part that scares me the most." Across the hotel, Ren sat in the penthouse suite, laptop open on the table beside a still steaming cup of sencha. Her assistant David paced behind her. "They've sent a statement," he said, scrolling on his phone, "from corporate PR. Calling the lobby incident an unfortunate deviation from protocol. They say you were assisted by a staff member acting outside his station." Ren didn't lift her eyes from the document she was reading. "They're trying to downplay it," David pressed. "Do you want me to draft a response?" She closed the laptop and finally looked at him. "No. No." Her voice was calm, but her eyes sharpened. "I'll respond in person. They're going to push back." "Then let them," she said. "I didn't build a billion-dollar company to let someone like Vanessa Cole decide who matters." David swallowed and gave a short nod. Ren sat back in her chair, gaze lingering on her own faint reflection in the darkened screen. Not the CEO for a moment. Just the girl who once worked nights in a Kyoto tea house folding strangers' words into polite shapes her grandmother taught her. That girl had learned how to be heard without ever raising her voice. She'd waited a long time to use it again. Downstairs, Daniel pushed his mop bucket into the lobby, letting the muted swish of water fill the quiet. Guests who'd seen the video glanced his way with recognition that felt fragile, built on hashtags. Not history. Vanessa intercepted him near the elevators, arms crossed like a sentry. "Mr. Mercer," she said crisply, "I trust you've received the notice from HR." "I did." "Then you understand the consequences of further deviation." "I do." "Good," she said, starting to turn away. "Then we won't have any confusion about no." A voice called from across the corridor, firm but unhurried. "We will have clarity, but not the kind you think." Both turned. Ren was walking toward them, each step deliberate, as if the hallway itself had been designed for her entrance. Miss Sato Vanessa set her professional mask snapping into place. "We were just discussing there was no misunderstanding," Ren cut in. "Only a failure of character." Vanessa blinked. "Excuse me." "You mistook silence for weakness," Ren said evenly, "and uniform for worth." Vanessa's cheeks flushed. "This is an internal staff matter." "Incorrect," Ren replied, her gaze unwavering. "This is a matter of human dignity." She turned to Daniel. "Mr. Mercer, would you walk with me?" He hesitated for only a heartbeat, then set the mop aside and fell into step beside her. As they passed into the quieter wing of the hotel, she spoke softly enough that only he could hear. "They can't stand that you didn't beg for credit." Daniel smiled faintly. "Let them stew." "I didn't do it for them." "I know," she said. "That's what makes it powerful." They walked on the silence between them, not heavy this time, but steady like a bridge built plank by plank. It was nearly midnight when Daniel turned his key and stepped into the small two-bedroom apartment he shared with Lily. The air smelled faintly of lavender and lemon, her doing. She'd cleaned the kitchen again without being asked, a quiet habit that always made him both proud and uneasy. Too much responsibility for a 10-year-old. "Dad." Her voice came from the hallway. "I'm home," he called, setting his bag down. She patted out, wrapped in her favorite fleece blanket hair, rumpled eyes sharp. "You were on the internet." Daniel blinked. I was what Lena showed me. Her mom watches the news while they eat dinner. You're everywhere. He sank onto the old blue couch. That wasn't supposed to happen. She curled up next to him, blanket pooling around them. They said you spoke Japanese to a billionaire and saved the hotel. Is that true? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he asked, do you remember when I told you that sometimes doing the right thing makes the wrong people angry? She nodded. Well, he said today was one of those days. She was quiet for a long moment. Are they going to fire you? The question landed heavier than it should have. I don't know yet, he admitted. She rested her head against his arm. Why do people get mad when someone's kind? He stared at the floor. Because kindness makes arrogance feel small. That's not your fault. No, he said softly. But it makes me the nearest target. Her voice dropped almost to a whisper. Is being good always this hard? Daniel kissed the top of her head. Yes, but it's also what makes you strong. Later that night when she was asleep, he sat alone at the kitchen table, a cup of cold tea at his elbow, and a pen in his hand. On a sheet of paper, he wrote slowly, carefully. Lily, one day, you'll be old enough to ask me not just what I did, but why I did it. I want to answer that question now, while the memory still stings and the truth is still warm. When people talk about courage, they usually picture someone loud, bold, demanding. But sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stay kind in a room that expects you to harden. Today, I saw a woman being erased with smiles. I've been on the receiving end of that kind of silence too many times. And if I've learned anything from raising you, it's this. We don't need the world's permission to do what's right. We just need the will to do it anyway. You once told me my work smells like lemon cleaner and kindness. I hope it always does. Love, Dad. He folded the letter, slipped it into an envelope, and wrote her name across the front. One day she'd need it, maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not for years, but it would be there when the world tried to convince her that quiet meant small. The next morning, Daniel arrived at the hotel before the lobby filled with clattering heels and the drone of small talk. In the janitor's closet, he opened his locker. Taped inside the door was a photo of Lily at 6 gap-toothed chocolate on her cheek, holding up a crayon award that read, Best Dad Ever. He smiled, took up his mop, and stepped into the hallway. Marcus caught up to him before he made it 10 feet. They're meeting right now, executive board. I heard they've called corporate. Daniel sighed. I figured. You okay? I will be. What about Miss Sato? She's still in the penthouse, Marcus said. Quiet, focused, like she's planning something bigger than all of us. Daniel nodded. Wouldn't surprise me. Marcus lowered his voice. You're not alone, man. Everyone down here, maintenance, housekeeping, kitchen, we're behind you. Daniel frowned. Why? Because you gave us something we haven't had in years. What's that? Marcus met his eyes. Proof we matter. Upstairs in the boardroom, Vanessa Cole stood at the head of a polished mahogany table, her posture so rigid it seemed carved. Around her, department heads and senior partners sat with expressions that wavered between unease and outright defiance. This has gone far enough, she said, her voice clipped. Mr. Mercer's behavior, however well-intentioned, has created a disruptive narrative. We need to reassert control over the hotel's brand before this becomes precedent. A low rustle moved through the room. One executive cleared his throat. With respect, Vanessa, the guest in question, hasn't filed a complaint. In fact, she's publicly praised Mr. Mercer's conduct, and bookings have increased 12% since yesterday, another added. We're getting inquiries from international clients asking if he still works here. Vanessa's mouth flattened. We cannot run a luxury establishment on sentiment. The door opened. Every head turned as Ren Sato stepped inside the pale morning light spilling in behind her. She crossed the room without hurry, set her phone on the table, and pressed play. Vanessa's voice filled the space, captured in crisp, damning clarity. This is America. If you want service here, speak English. We don't have time for guessing games and silent treatment. We didn't hire staff to perform kabuki theater for billionaires. Silence followed, thick, unbroken. Ren stopped the recording. I gave you an opportunity to correct the record, she said evenly. You chose to pretend nothing happened. Vanessa stiffened. You recorded that without my consent. You were in a public space, Ren replied, surrounded by witnesses, including your own staff. She turned to the executives. I came here to evaluate this hotel as a long-term partner for our Global Tech Summit. What I found was a culture of assumption and one man willing to speak humanity into a room full of protocol. She let her gaze sweep the table. I will not cancel the summit, but I will only attach my company's name to institutions that recognize value beyond title. Her final words landed with the force of a gavel. Daniel Mercer is that standard. No one spoke. Downstairs, the ballroom had never been this full. Rows of media cameras lined the velvet ropes. Reporters whispered their questions, stacked and waiting. On the stage, there were no sponsor banners, no corporate backdrops, just a single line projected in white against black. Sometimes silence is the loudest truth. Backstage, Daniel stood in a freshly laundered shirt. Still no tie, still no suit. He'd refused both. Ren adjusted the sleeve of her ivory blazer with the same precision she used to negotiate billion-dollar contracts. She looked at him. You don't need to speak. I want to, he said. You don't owe them anything. I know, Daniel replied, but maybe they need to hear it anyway. She studied him for a moment, then nodded. Then speak. When they stepped out together, the flash of cameras hit like a wave. Ren walked to the podium first, stood in perfect stillness for a full 60 seconds, then bowed deeply. Formal, deliberate. Gasps rustled through the crowd. She stepped aside. Daniel took her place. My name is Daniel Mercer, he began, voice steady. I clean floors for a living. I used to teach languages, studied silence. Then life happened and silence became my job description. A faint ripple of laughter passed through the room. Yesterday, I watched someone powerful get dismissed not because she was wrong, but because she wouldn't perform on someone else's terms. I've been on that end of things. Some of you have too. The room quieted. I didn't step forward because I was brave. I stepped forward because I recognized the look in her eyes. That look we get when the world tells us we don't belong in rooms we've already paid to enter. I didn't offer a statement. I offered a cup of tea. I spoke her language not to impress her, but to remind her she wasn't alone. And in return, she reminded me I still had a voice. He stepped back. Ren returned to the microphone. I've done 100 interviews in my career, she said. I've been expected to smile, to pitch, to please. But not today. Today I am here as a woman who watched a man with a mop do what a room full of experts could not. He didn't see a language barrier. He saw me. She held up a small photo, the now famous image of Daniel bowing with a teapot in hand. This has been shared 12 million times. But what matters isn't the image. It's what you didn't see. You didn't see how many people rolled their eyes when I chose silence. You didn't see the smirks, the dismissals, the measured cruelty wrapped in customer service smiles. And you didn't see his hand tremble when he bowed, because it didn't. He met my silence with strength, not fear. That is the kind of leadership I want in every boardroom I enter. Applause swelled and didn't fade quickly. Ren let it settle before speaking again. There's one last thing. She reached into her blazer pocket and unfolded a piece of paper. It's a letter Daniel wrote to his daughter. It says, "We don't need the world's permission to do what's right. We just need the will to do it anyway." A hush spread over the ballroom, the kind that made people sit forward in their seats. Ren's eyes found Daniel's. She's lucky to have you. Daniel swallowed. I'm the lucky one. When the press conference ended, there was no corporate slogan, no polished marketing reel, just two people bowing to each other under the glare of hot lights. In a room full of tailored suits and camera flashes, dignity had stood taller than branding. Hours later, Daniel found himself sitting in a quiet cafe 2 blocks from the hotel. No microphones, no audience. Just the faint hum of the espresso machine and the soft clink of ceramic cups. Across from him, Ren cradled a cup of sencha in both hands. You didn't have to let me read that letter, she said. I know, Daniel replied, but maybe the world needed to know I'm not just a janitor. Her eyes softened. You never were. You just stopped correcting them. A light breeze from the open window stirred the steam from her cup. Will you go back? She asked. To teaching? He looked down at the table. I don't know. The world feels different now. Maybe, she said quietly, the world just finally caught up to who you've always been. They sat in companionable silence for a moment. Outside, the afternoon traffic murmured past. The next day, Daniel received a message to meet Wren at Whitaker Tower, her company's headquarters. The elevator rose without a sound, its mirrored walls multiplying his reflection in endless corridors of himself. He'd traded his work shirt for a clean button-up and an old corduroy jacket that still smelled faintly of his late wife's favorite cologne. On the 42nd floor, a receptionist gestured him into a private conference room. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed half the city, its towers catching the late sunlight. Wren sat at the head of the table, her hands folded neatly, her expression unreadable. "You asked to see me," she said. Daniel took a seat opposite her. "I figured if you're going to put your name on me, you should at least know mine. I'm Daniel Mercer, former linguistics lecturer, father, widower, current janitor, temporary internet meme." Her lips didn't move toward a smile. "Why did you agree to speak for me?" "Because silence isn't the absence of words," he said. "It's the presence of meaning. What you did at that conference, it meant something." Her gaze flickered a hairline crack in her composure. "You know what they're saying about me, that I've lost control, that I've turned a brand crisis into a personal crusade. The board's watching me like I'm a malfunctioning asset. Is that what you think?" he asked. "No," she said flatly. "I think it's a mirror. People didn't applaud because I said something profound. They applauded because you did something inconveniently decent. You reminded them of a humanity they've learned to ignore." Daniel held her eyes. "And that scares them." "No," she said. "That shames them." Silence stretched across the table, but this one wasn't brittle. It was heavy with something unspoken. Then Wren's voice lowered. "There's something I've never told anyone." He stayed still. "I was 6 the first time I refused to speak," she said. "My parents sent me to an elite prep school in Tokyo. I didn't understand a word anyone said for the first month. Every time I tried, I heard my difference echo back at me. The teachers called my silence discipline. I just stopped trying." Daniel's voice was quiet. "And that silence followed you all the way to Harvard, to boardrooms, to the days I thought I was in love. I learned to use it as armor." She looked down at her hands. "But armor gets heavy. And lonely," he added. Her eyes lifted to his. "Why am I telling you this?" "Because you know I'll hear it," he said simply. She hesitated. "I think I remember your wife." The air shifted. "She taught English at the community center on Mott Street, right?" Daniel blinked. "Yes, I was 19, new to America, no confidence, barely any English." "She was my teacher," Wren said. "She never made me feel stupid. She wore cherry blossom earrings and carried a thermos of miso soup every day. One afternoon, she asked us to write a letter to our future selves. I wrote, 'One day I want to be a woman who speaks truth without needing volume.'" Daniel's throat tightened. She disappeared from the center. Wren continued. "They said she was sick, leukemia." Daniel said quietly, 6 months from diagnosis to—" He trailed off. "I'm sorry," she said. "Truly." They sat in silence, not the kind that builds walls, but the kind that lets two people stand on the same side for a while. "You remembered her all this time?" he asked. "She taught me my first English sentence I ever loved." Wren replied, "What was it?" "Your voice matters even when it's quiet." Daniel's hand curled against the table. "She'd be proud of you," Wren said softly. "Not just for what you did in that lobby, for who you are now." He didn't speak because he couldn't. When he finally stood to leave, she walked him to the elevator. "I want to offer you a job," she said. "Not as a janitor, as a consultant for internal ethics and communication. You understand dignity in a way most companies never will. I want that in mine." Daniel searched her face. You're serious. I'm rarely anything else. I'll think about it." As the elevator doors began to close, she added, "Tell Lily her mother was unforgettable." The doors sealed and Daniel stood in the mirrored box descending, yet somehow it didn't feel like going down. That evening, back in his modest apartment, Daniel sat at the kitchen table, the soft yellow light casting a warm halo over a drawer he hadn't opened in years. He slid it out slowly and reached inside. Beneath a tangle of old receipts and keys was a folded piece of paper, Lily's letter to her mother, written when she was 6 and still struggling with her words. The crayon letters were uneven but determined. Dear Mommy, Daddy says you're in the sky. I wish you could come back. I want to show you my drawing of our family. You, me, and Daddy cleaning the stars. Daniel pressed it to his chest. His throat ached. On impulse, he flipped it over and began writing on the blank side, his pen scratching softly in the quiet. The next afternoon, the wind whispered through the Whitaker courtyard, rattling the early spring blossoms like pages turning in a book. Daniel stood beneath a cherry tree holding Lily's backpack. His hands were steady, but his heart wasn't. Mr. Mercer. He turned. Wren was crossing the courtyard toward him. No heels today, just jeans, a navy sweater, her hair pulled into a low ponytail. She looked lighter. She's waiting for you, Wren said when she reached him. Who, Lily? She replied, almost smiling. She asked if you'd sit in. Me? Wren nodded. She said, Dad talks like the sky listens. I figured that meant something. Daniel let out a quiet breath. She always says things sideways, but they land right where they need to. They entered the small therapy room together. It wasn't sterile like he'd feared. Rugs softened the floor. Beanbags sagged with use, and books lined the walls in rainbow order. Lily sat cross-legged on the rug, clutching her worn plush rabbit. Dr. Allen, the speech therapist, knelt nearby. Hi, Lily, Dr. Allen said warmly. Want to try again today? Lily looked at her father. He nodded. Only if you want to, sweetheart. A beat passed. Then Lily whispered something almost too soft to hear. Dr. Allen smiled. Did you say okay? Lily nodded. Let's play the color game, Dr. Allen said. I'll hold up a card and you tell me the color when you're ready. Red card. Silence. Green card. Silence. Yellow card. Nothing. Then came the blue card. Lily blinked and said barely above a whisper. Sky, not blue. Sky. Daniel's breath caught. Wren's eyes shone. That's right, Dr. Allen said gently. The sky is blue. Lily's fingers tightened around the rabbit. Do you want to try another? She didn't answer. Instead, she turned to Wren and said quietly, I saw you cry. Wren froze. The room stilled. You were holding the locket, Lily added. Wren's voice was fragile when she answered. Yes, I was. My mom had one too, Lily said, but hers was broken. Wren's voice trembled. Did it have cherry blossoms? Lily nodded. Daniel's head turned sharply toward Wren. She looked back at him, her expression a mixture of shock and something deeper. She gave it to me when I was little, Lily continued. She said, when people miss each other, the flowers remember. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Wren moved slowly, kneeling beside Lily. Your mother was my teacher a long time ago, Wren said softly. I didn't know you were her daughter until recently. Lily blinked. Did she teach you words? No, Wren said. She taught me silence, the kind that holds meaning. A tear slipped down Lily's cheek. I miss her. Wren reached into her pocket and drew out her locket. She opened it with care. Inside was a faded photo of Emma Mercer smiling warmly. Lily's eyes widened. I have the other half, she whispered. Daniel sank into a chair. Emma had given Lily her half before she passed, telling her one day someone would return the other piece. Lily pulled her locket from her backpack. The two halves clicked together with a tiny sound like a door unlocking. The room exhaled all at once. That night, Wren invited them to her home, not her penthouse, but her real home. A modest craftsman-style house tucked in a quiet street shaded by sycamore's wind chimes clinking gently in the breeze. She opened the door herself barefoot. No staff tonight, she said. Just us. Lily took her hand immediately. Daniel followed, noticing the bare walls not cold, just waiting. You don't have any pictures, Lily observed. Wren hesitated. I used to think silence meant strength. Now I think maybe I was just afraid of echoes. Daniel's voice was warm. Then let's make new ones. Dinner was simple miso soup, grilled salmon, and rice, but the conversation flowed easily like a stream winding between stones. Lily spoke more than usual, her small voice steady in the candlelit kitchen. She asked Wren about her favorite books as a kid, whether she'd ever climbed a tree, and if she'd been scared the first time she spoke in front of a big crowd. Wren admitted she had been. My voice shook, my hands shook, even my knees. Lily grinned. "So you were like me?" Wren smiled gently. "Exactly like you." After the dishes were cleared, Wren led them into a room at the back of the house. The air smelled faintly of linseed oil and paper. One wall was lined with neatly stacked sketchbooks and jars of brushes. Against another wall, an easel stood ready with a fresh, untouched canvas. "This used to be my art room," she said. "I stopped using it when work got too loud." Daniel stepped closer to the shelves. "You paint?" "Not lately," she replied, "but I think maybe it's time again." She pulled out 3 chairs and gestured toward the canvas. "Your turn to start, Lily." Lily hesitated. Anything, Daniel said. "What does this family look like to you?" She dipped a brush into yellow paint and made a small sun in the corner. "Son," Wren asked. Lily shook her head. "That's Dad. He's always warm even when it rains." Wren's lips curved in surprise. "And me?" Lily switched to green and brown, painting a large tree across the side of the canvas, steady, full grounding. "You're the root. You keep us strong." Daniel's throat tightened. "And you—" She paused, then carefully painted a heart in the center of the canvas. "I'm the space in between, the quiet part. But it's still love." Wren reached out, brushing a lock of hair behind Lily's ear. "You're not the quiet part anymore, sweetheart. You're the voice that taught us how to listen." They stayed in the room until the paint dried, each stroke a thread weaving them closer together. A week later, Wren surprised Daniel with a gift wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a book hardcover matte finish with watercolor illustrations on every page. The title read, "The Girl Who Drew Silence." "I published it under both our names," Wren said. "Yours and Lily's." Daniel turned the pages slowly. The story was simple, a little girl who didn't speak but painted the world in colors no one else could see. On the last page was a single line, "She never needed to shout. Her love was loud enough." "It's beautiful," Daniel murmured. "It's true," Wren said. The book spread quietly but steadily past between teachers, therapists, and parents. Letters began to arrive from strangers who saw themselves in its pages. One note came from a father who wrote, "I thought my son was unreachable until I realized he wasn't silent. I just wasn't listening the right way." By June, the 3 of them stood in a small backyard strung with fairy lights. It wasn't a grand wedding, just a gathering of close friends and a neighbor's guitar playing softly in the background. Lily wore a pale pink dress and carried a basket of rose petals. Daniel turned to Wren, his voice catching. "For a woman who built a business empire, it took you long enough to let someone love you." She arched a brow. "For a janitor with a mop and a heart of gold, you're surprisingly patient." They both laughed. Then Wren leaned in so only he could hear. "Thank you for never trying to fix me, just for standing still until I could find my way back." When they exchanged vows, they didn't promise perfection. They promised presence. They promised to speak truth even when it trembled to listen, even when there were no words. Lily tossed her rose petals high as they kissed. Then she looked up at the night sky and whispered. Mama found her voice. The night air in Wren's backyard still smelled faintly of roses when the last guest drifted away. Daniel stood beside her under the soft glow of the string lights, watching Lily chase fireflies barefoot across the grass. "Did you ever think," Wren asked quietly, "that a spilled mop bucket in a hallway would lead to all this?" Daniel's mouth curved into a half smile. "I've stopped being surprised by what happens when people stay." She tilted her head toward him. "And you, what are you still searching for?" He didn't hesitate. "Honestly, this us." Wren leaned against his shoulder. The silence between them was comfortable, rich, not the kind that hides pain, but the kind that fills you. In that quiet, she understood something she'd never said aloud. Love itself had become their shared language. The next weekend, they took Lily to the park where she'd first given Wren a flower, a clumsy daisy with petals missing handed over on a day when Wren had still been learning what love could sound like without words. This time, Wren brought the flower. She handed it to Lily beneath the blooming cherry blossoms. "This is for you," she said. Lily frowned slightly. "Why?" "Because you reminded me that love isn't perfect, it's just patient." Lily turned the stem in her fingers. "Does that mean you'll stay even when I'm mad or quiet again?" "Especially then," Wren answered. Lily leaned her head on Wren's shoulder. "You didn't run when I was broken. You helped me remember the colors." Daniel stood a few paces away, watching them. In that moment, he didn't see the CEO or the silent little girl. He saw the family they had built one heartbeat at a time. That evening, they gathered in the art room again. The once bare walls were now alive with Lily's crayon drawings and watercolor splashes. In the center of the floor, a blank canvas waited. "Your turn to start," Wren told Lily. She hesitated. "What should I paint?" Daniel crouched beside her. "What does this family look like to you right now?" Lily dipped her brush into gold paint and drew a small circle in the corner. "That's you again," Wren guessed. Lily shook her head. "That's home. Because home is warm even when it rains." Wren's breath caught. "And me." With calm precision, Lily painted a tall lamp beside the circle. "You're the light. You help us see where we're going." "And you?" Daniel asked gently. Lily painted a heart right in the center of the canvas. "I'm the space in between. I hold you both together." Wren blinked quickly, then set her hand over Lily's. "And we're never letting go." They worked on the painting until long after the sun had set, brushstrokes layering over each other like unspoken promises. By the time they washed the brushes, Daniel realized the canvas wasn't just a picture, it was a map of where they'd been and where they were going. By late summer, the rhythm of their life felt like a language only the three of them spoke. Mornings began with coffee in mismatched mugs. Lily's soft footsteps padding into the kitchen and Wren reading headlines aloud while Daniel pretended not to care until she hit a story worth debating. Afternoons often found them in the courtyard of Whitaker Tower, where Lily liked to sit with her sketchpad while Daniel worked on translating old Japanese poetry. Sometimes Wren joined laptop balanced on her knees, corporate storms raging quietly on her screen. But more often, she simply watched them. The corners of her mouth curved into something that looked a lot like peace. One Tuesday, an unexpected email arrived in Daniel's inbox. The subject line was a single word, invitation. It was from the University of Cambridge. They'd heard about his speech at the press conference and wanted him to give a guest lecture on the power of silence in communication. Daniel read it twice, then a third time. That evening over dinner, he slid his phone across the table. Wren read the email, then looked up at him. So, it's a long flight, he said. She gave him a flat look. "Daniel." He grinned faintly. "So I should probably say yes." Lily clapped her hands. "Can I come? I've never been on a big plane." Daniel hesitated. "It's during the school year." Wren glanced at Lily. "We'll make it work. Some lessons aren't in books." 2 months later, the three of them stepped off a plane into the cool gray of an English autumn. Cambridge's ancient stone buildings rose around them like pages from another century. On the day of the lecture, Daniel stood behind a podium in a wood-paneled hall. Professors and students filled the rows, their notebooks ready. Wren and Lily sat together in the front. He began with a story not about the press conference, but about Emma. About how she used to tell her students that silence was a bridge, not a wall. He spoke of the moment in the hotel lobby when he'd bowed to Wren and how the act wasn't about culture or etiquette, but recognition. Sometimes the loudest thing you can give someone, he said, is the space to be heard. When he finished, the applause was warm and sustained, but what mattered most was Lily's beaming face and the way Wren squeezed her hand. Afterward, a young woman approached him. She introduced herself as a speech therapy student and said, "Your story, it's going to change how I practice. Thank you." On their last night in Cambridge, they walked along the River Cam under a sky scattered with stars. Lily skipped ahead, her laughter echoing over the water. Wren slipped her arm through Daniel's. "You know, she said Emma would have been proud." Daniel's voice was steady. "She'd have been proud of you too." Wren smiled, the reflection of the lamplight dancing in her eyes. "Maybe, but she'd have been happiest knowing Lily's not afraid to speak her colors anymore." They stood there for a long time, listening to the quiet ripples of the river. 3 lives once separate, now woven into something neither silence nor distance could undo. Winter settled in with a soft persistence, frosting the edges of their mornings and slowing the world outside their windows. In the living room, the painting Lily had made, the one with the golden circle, the tall lamp, and the heart now hung above the mantel. It was the first thing anyone saw when they stepped into the house. On a Saturday afternoon, the 3 of them gathered there again, mugs of cocoa warming their hands. The radio hummed faintly in the background, some old jazz standard that Emma used to play on Sundays. Daniel glanced at the canvas and said, "I think it's missing something." Lily tilted her head. "What?" He handed her a thin paintbrush. "That's up to you." She studied the picture for a long moment, then dipped the brush into silver paint and drew a faint winding line connecting the sun, the lamp, and the heart. "That's the path," she said. "So we always know how to find each other." Wren's eyes softened, even when the lights go out. Especially then, Daniel said. That evening, Wren's company hosted its annual winter gala. This time, there were no whispers about her silence, no side glances. Instead, the moment she stepped onto the stage, the room fell quiet out of respect, not curiosity. She spoke briefly about connection, about listening, about dignity, and then invited Daniel and Lily to join her. This year, Wren told the crowd, "We're honoring the idea that a single act of humanity can rewrite more than one life." Daniel took the microphone, his hand steady. "I used to think my life had narrowed to the size of a mop bucket, but someone saw me not for what I was doing, but for who I was. And that changed everything." Lily, standing between them, looked out at the sea of faces. "And someone heard me even when I wasn't talking." The applause rolled through the hall like a wave. Afterward, in the quiet of the car ride home, Lily leaned against Daniel's shoulder. "Daddy." "Yeah." "Does this mean we're famous now?" Daniel chuckled. "No, kiddo. It means we're seen." "That's better." Wren reached over and took his hand, her fingers threading through his. Outside, the snow began to fall, thick, soft flakes catching in the glow of the street lamps. When they reached home, Lily ran ahead, leaving footprints on the front path. Daniel and Wren lingered under the porch light for a moment. "You know," she said, "silence doesn't feel heavy anymore." Daniel smiled. "That's because it's not carrying loneliness now, just love." Inside, Lily was already hanging her coat, humming to herself. The golden circle. The tall lamp and the heart watched over them from the wall. Their story had started in a hallway with a mop, a bow, and a shared quiet. But it had grown into something neither of them could have predicted, a family that didn't just speak, but listened deeply and without fear. Your thoughts help us create stories that matter. And if you'd like more powerful healing stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, so you never miss a new episode. And most importantly, share this video with someone who needs a little hope today. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. We see you, we hear you, and we're honored to tell these stories for you.